Hello. Hello out there. Oh, I cannot believe it's Friday again already. I've shared before that these live streams are basically the highlight of my week most of the time. So I absolutely love coming on here and getting to share and just Lola loves it too. Speaking of Lola, she and I had a run-in yesterday. A bit of a run-in with Lola. She was pottying in one of Mama's plants, and Mama caught her in the act, and Mama lost it, just like a lot. And it was definitely interesting for a lot of reasons. Kind of like, I feel like I'm not probably the only one this week. I think Will Smith might put himself in this category, but like, it's been a long time since I saw myself get that mad. And that was like interesting, eye-opening. Anger is really interesting when you really sit with it and like bring compassion to the anger so you can go under the anger and like see what's even there. I'll pause this real quick. Yeah, so I don't have kids, but I do have 4 pets. And I think similar to children, they are my teachers. They bring me my life lessons so that I can like work through them in the physical. And yesterday having to unravel like why was I so mad at Lola? Like, yeah, it was an intense moment, and getting to see my own shadow like that, like getting to see my anger just kind of like burst up out of nowhere. And even after like I was aware that like I'm so mad at her, and like I think the level of my anger doesn't match the infraction, and even in that awareness it like had a hold of me. Like people ask me all the time like when do you do shadow work, like how do you, like when should you approach it? And it's like in that moment when it like has a hold on you, like you're reasoning with yourself and you see like you can see reason and yet you still feel how you feel. That tells you like if you're seeing what you think should be reason, like this is logic, I shouldn't be this mad at my cat. You're seeing reason and you still feel the way you feel. To me, it says you haven't gone deep enough into that shadow to understand like what is it really trying to tell you. And it was really interesting because I've been studying gene keys, which when you say it fast, it sounds like you're saying jinky, like the plural of jinky. And so I try to say it like that, jinkies. But the gene keys, and I bought the books for the Golden Path, and they came in the mail like a week ago, and I've been really diving into them. And one of my little bubbles on my gene key chart is gene key 46, and the shadow of gene key 46 is seriousness. That like you'll kill yourself basically by taking life so seriously, and that so much of the resistance with that gene key comes from just how seriously you're taking life in that moment. And so as I was so mad at her, and as I'm cleaning up the potty that now is dripping onto my carpet, I'm like, what really is the point? Because if I want to be a being who brings more love into the world and I'm this mad because now I have cat pee on my carpet, like something is out of whack here. Like, and that was what I saw, was that shadow of seriousness. And it's so fun because I had just been reading about the gene keys and gene key 46 and the shadow of seriousness. And I'm sitting there thinking like, I mean, I feel like I've mostly transmuted that. Like, I feel like I'm up here in delight. Like, I am really easygoing, blah, 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 like the stories you can tell yourself. And in that moment, there was nothing easygoing about me because I was like a freaking warrior over defending the plant and the carpet. And in the warriorness, I have all this anger that I directed at the cat. And it's like, there's something wrong. I'm a being of love. I want to put love out into the world. Like, what just happened here? Because I think I got off track on my mission somewhere along the way in this series of events. And I recognize this shadow of seriousness and just how intense it felt, that like this mistake, this off plan, unexpected mess now existed, and I was like furious in an instant. So yeah, that was like being shown your shadow, coming face to face with your shadow. And personally, the way that looking ahead at the month of April and the energies and everything that we have going on this month astrologically, which is a lot, it's really about, good morning, Shay, hello. It's really about diving deeper into those shadows and understanding, like, how can I make peace with this? How can I bring a greater sense of compassion to myself within this? How can I be with this? Like, basically what I experienced in that moment when I recognized, like, I was so furious, and Tara Brock's voice comes in my head and she's like, and can you be with this? Can you be with furious Carly? Can you still love her? Can you still put an arm around her and care about her and want her to feel better? Like, can you still do that? And I was like, yeah, I can. And so I just let myself be mad. And I think it's not about Lola. Like, she obviously, like the cat, she obviously set off the grenade, but the depth of that anger, like, it goes elsewhere. And so I think that's just one of the pieces that, like, this month of April, it's bringing any darkness that we're ready to transmute into light. That darkness has to come to the surface so that we can work with it. So I see this month and a lot of the transits within it as giving us a deeper sense of clarity around what are we ready to surrender and let go of. And that will be a choice. It's a readiness on our part. So there's no prescription of like what you need to let go of. But as we talk through it, it's like there will be ways that basically these energies, they do promote surrender and letting go. And the way that they do that is through bringing suffering to the surface. They bring the shadow to the surface, and where it's really real and alive in that moment. And in that moment, you can bring the newness and the fullness of who you've become today to that shadow pattern and like love it how you would love it today, because those shadows, they reach back into our past and our upbringing, even our past lives. We brought them with us in some cases. These shadow patterns, like every little bit that you're able to bring some compassion to yourself, even when you're demonstrating emotions that normally you would condemn about yourself. I've seen my anger erupt enough times in my life. Like, I know what it's all about. Maybe I don't. Maybe that's part of the problem. But it doesn't happen nearly as often as it used to. And yet here I was, like, in this moment of thinking, like, I'm evolved beyond that. And then my cat pees in my plant and I explode. And it's like, okay, so I guess I got some more work to do, is basically my takeaway. And the Tara Brock moment of like, can I be with angry Carly? Can I love myself anyway, even though I'm acting out or I'm misbehaving? Like, these are the moments. Shadow work basically is like reparenting ourselves. And when you misbehave, how do you handle it with yourself? How do you discipline or not yourself? And I've beat up on myself a lot. Like, I am my own worst critic. I know I am. And so for that moment to be demonstrating such ugly emotions and to love myself in the midst of it, I'm like, while I'm so mad, I'm like still seething with anger. It's like it's a chemical issue. Like, emotions, once they're running through you, they take at least, like they say, like 90 to 120 seconds to like for that chemistry to subside. So like, it's an intense couple minutes, no matter what, no matter how quickly you can bring clarity to it. But as soon as you bring clarity and awareness to it, it's like Now you can let that wave just pass, and now you're back. You're back with your awareness of like who you really are and your deeper intention in the world. And so in the middle of my anger, I'm like getting so excited because I'm like, this is exactly what the month of April is all about. This is like having those shadows brought to the surface and loving ourselves anyway, having compassion for ourselves in the midst of an emotional meltdown moment. Like, that's probably one of the toughest moments, to have compassion for yourself when you're acting in a way that you yourself don't approve of. This goes against who I want to be, who I think I, want to show up as in the world. And in that moment of like, instead of condemning yourself, you're nice and you're understanding and you're like, wow, that's a big emotion. Any chances that's bigger than the cat peeing in the plant? Because that's a really big reaction that you just had there. And it was a reaction. It wasn't a response. So like, there's a big difference. Like that moment when I looked over and see what she's doing to my plant, like that was a trigger. That was a reaction. There was no choice. There was no thought put into how might I express this emotion so that Lola can understand where I'm. There was none of that. There was a scream that like freaking hurt my throat. That was my first wake up call, was like, Jesus, Carly. Like it was intense, but self-compassion was still there. And I was like, yes, all of this, all of these shadows that get brought to the surface this month, like really what it's doing is nudging our self-compassion to the next level. So loving ourselves more, finding our own inner resiliency that has nothing to do with the way our form is manifesting in any moment. Like in that moment, I'm a melted down, mad, growling, scary creature that I don't recognize, that I don't want to be her. I know that for a fact. And I don't even really understand like how was I being her? Like it just caught me so off guard. And yet there was a layer wrapped around all of it that said, this is interesting. Like this is a different side. This is a side we don't see very often. I wonder what it has to say. And so that's possible. I know because it happened yesterday. Like I don't know that that's something you can like try, but like I know if you incrementally bring a deeper and deeper level of compassion to yourself and like letting yourself feel whatever you feel, like letting it all be okay as you can let it be in any given moment, that like you basically strengthen that compassion like a muscle. Like it gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And that just means like no matter how intense the chemistry inside of your vessel is, and it like steals your focus for a second because it's so intense, even so, there's still a more dominant awareness that says like you are actually more than what this vessel could even ever contain. Like this is just such like a piece of you. And like this Pisces energy, this really dominant Pisces energy, which is so weird for Aries season. Like the sun's in Aries right now. We should be on to the astrological new year and spring and all of that. But like, this is like an extended winter. Pisces is technically a winter sign, but it's also a mutable sign. So it's this is a term I learned this week, double bodied, which it sounds like all the mutable signs are double bodied. It just means like, so Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces are the mutable signs. They end their season and like give way to the new season. And so with Pisces, it ends winter and hands over to spring. And so the first 15 degrees of Pisces is very much more winter. And then the second 15 degrees of Pisces is a lot more spring. So it's very much about this handoff of like bringing the darkness and moving it to the light. So there is a process of transmutation that like this energy is changing form like within us. And by that, I mean, we can go from feeling guilty or ashamed or regretful or all of these lower vibrational things. And through this month of April, the transmutation is taking guilt and turning it into self-compassion and turning it into a greater level of self-acceptance, turning it into a deeper understanding that I am in progress. There is no self-criticism. There's only an observation of where I am right now. And the rest of it is growing out of where I am right now. So there is such a beautiful opportunity with this month of April and all of this Pisces energy that is very dominant in the skies right now. And so the rest of today, today's live stream is going to be diving back into Pisces, looking at Venus and Mars as they're both going to make their journey through Pisces in these coming weeks. And how all of this ties back together with really where are we headed, because any of the 12 zodiac signs are just one piece of the puzzle. This is just one stage. This Pisces stage that we're moving through is clearing away something. It's transmuting heavy things into things that are lighter and easier and take up less energetic space. And by doing that, there's this new opening that's created. There's empty space in your energy now. If your physical house was filled to the brim, hoarder style, filled to the brim, like totally all the way up here, you can't bring another new thing in there. And really energetically, we are mostly all the time always full. It feels very uncomfortable for most people for their grid to be empty. Like we wander around like aimlessly, like restlessly, like I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And we want to be doing something. We want to know what our purpose is. And so having an empty grid, not something most people just have hanging around. Plus, when you empty your grid, the universe very quickly can bring something new and put it in that now empty space. And that's basically what's happening with this April season going into May, where all these same personal planets plus Jupiter will be moving on into Aries. Plus, we have eclipse season starting at the end of April, which is also kind of bringing in this wave of like what's new, what's coming, and like basically where we are today, literally today, April 1st, 2022, is the Aries new moon is like in the sky right now. And if you watched last week's episode, you saw that basically I interpreted that as it's giving us an intentional preview of who our next level of evolution, like who that self is. And then we're going to go through April and we're going to release and transmute all this heavy stuff into divine love and compassion and acceptance. And that is going to open up this space. May hits June, July. The rest of the year is about filling it back in. There is absolutely so much ready to come in. We have healed. We have gone through processes. We're going to talk about all that. And now it's like we're on the home stretch, this last like little pocket of actually, I feel like Pisces is such a place of integration where like you learned the lesson, you appreciate the knowledge. You wouldn't trade the knowledge of the experience for anything. You can see exactly how it made you who you're meant to be right now today. And you're so grateful for whatever happened. And through that process, that's really transcendence. So there's so much compassion and acceptance and forgiveness that goes into being able to transcend old hurts and old pain. And so this is just going to be one more layer, right? Like we go around the sun and we move through these cycles of the 12 zodiac signs. And every year we go through Pisces season, and it's just another layer of kind of closing the chapter on this last round of healing and really integrating what we took from this last round of healing and letting go of the rest of it, letting go of the anger, the resentment, the hurt feelings, the taking any of it personally, because we understand that's exactly what needed to happen. That was the universe looking out for me, bringing the pieces together at exactly the right time. And I can see that now because I'm so glad that happened, because it led to this and this and this. When we stand back and look at it from a bigger picture, we see that really everything is happening in perfect timing. perfect timing that supports us healing the things that we came forward into this life to heal. So that's kind of a look ahead at what we're going to look at today. I'm going to pause right there because I see it's like you're on the radio. Great. That's perfect. Have you read The Untethered Soul? That is so crazy that you say that. That book helped me so much in becoming aware of my thoughts and emotions in the moment and begin to observe them. So I bought that book like 2 years ago. No, more like a year and a half ago. And I read maybe like a page and then I stuck it on the shelf. Like that was kind of at the very end of me buying books because I really like wasn't a reader for so long that I had such a hard time getting through it. And anyways, the other day I was looking for something else. This was literally like within the last few days. And I go to the shelf and I see this book and I thought it said something very different, and I pulled it out and it was The Untethered Soul, and I opened it and kind of flipped through some of the chapter headings and it looked really interesting. So I left it out hoping that I would circle back and read it. So that's really a wonderful synchronicity. Thank you so much. And really proving my point on like everything in divine timing. Nothing is out of order. Nothing is off schedule. Nothing is anything other than exactly what it is meant to be, exactly what is for the highest good of all. And that, of course, this is why Pisces energy kind of touches into like victimhood and that sort of thing, because like Pisces is the all. Pisces is the completion and the end, and it has little bits of everything, and it's the all. And the all includes the pain and the darkness and the suffering and the wound that gives birth to the healing. So the all includes all of it. And depending on where you are in your Pisces frequency, these few weeks of April are just going to turn the volume up on what your dominant Pisces energy looks like. And so my goal with this Pisces overview is to give us a range of like, what are the frequencies along the Pisces spectrum? Each of the 12 zodiac archetypes, it's not just one thing. It's like slivers and facets and so many different frequencies that range from the shadow expression of Pisces to the highest angelic, highest frequency expression of Pisces. There's a whole range of behavior here. But there are some keywords just to start with, just to kind of like set the table. So surrender, release, letting go, opening new space, creating that new void, the end of a cycle, transmutation towards unconditional love, which is the highest frequency of Pisces, is that unconditional love, merging with source love, finding your spiritual service, and on kind of that flip side, shadow side, is a sense of powerlessness and not enoughness. And that side really does come again from the all. I mean, you're connected to the all. And when you really, kind of the same thing, like in human form, like when you stand next to the Grand Canyon, you feel small. And in your Pisces energy, when you're aware and open to the all, you feel small. But you're also source energy in human form. Like we all are. We are all an extension of that source energy, that spark of the divine itself, manifesting itself into our lives and healing itself through us. So yes, we are small. Yes, we have the illusion of separateness and that we are just one individual piece, but each of us individually is what make up the whole, the universe, the entirety of all of it. Like that doesn't exist without each of us individually. So we have a universe inside of us. That's like, I feel like a fact at this point, to my level of introspection, to my level of like diving deeper and deeper and deeper into like my emotions and where do they go? Where do they come from? That really is my question. Where they can take me by surprise sometimes, where they burst out of nowhere. And so I want to know, where do they come from? They come from our higher selves. They come from like that part of ourselves that is still exactly connected to source energy itself, to like God itself. And I had a conversation recently with someone who was contemplating, am I special? Am I allowed to be special? Because I kind of feel like I'm special, but aren't we all special? And it's like that. It's like when you get heavy into your Pisces energy, when you can feel that you are source energy manifested into human form, yeah, you feel special. You feel like divine, like you start to wonder, like, I mean, you can actually start to feel like God itself, source energy itself, is experiencing the world through your vessel, that you are cooperating, allowing the divine to fill you. Like that's one of the highest expressions of Pisces energy. And so obviously as a human, especially if you're paying attention to like mainstream culture, that's confusing because we're all special, we're all the same, like there's equality and all of that. And that's so true. But also there's part of that that's aiming to like damp down how special you feel, like how special you are allowing yourself to be. Like, yes, we're all special, but that doesn't mean that you're not special. Like you're still special in the way you think you are, even though every single human being is also like that. Every single human being is God. Every single human, like every single animal, every single tree, flower, everything has consciousness that is the same, that is source energy. And so this Pisces season, like it just turns the volume up on that. And this extended Pisces season where, you know, like the sun, like we said, has already moved on into Aries, and this Pisces energy is like extra, and it's so drawn out, and which is so fascinating to me because of the once in a lifetime, once every 166 year conjunction between Neptune and Jupiter. So while we have all of this Venus and Mars moving through Pisces these next several weeks, it's also at the same time as the once in 166 year conjunction of Neptune and Jupiter in Pisces. So this is just, it feels huge. It's like, that's not nearly a big enough word, but like it feels like how Pam Gregory put it. She's like, this is a moment where we've all been kind of sensing this fork in the road where it seems like, you know, the 3D world is it. I mean, it just gets worse and worse and worse over there. They got all kinds of things that are just like the opposite of what you would want. And then there's this 5D world. There's more and more and more people who are tapping into this inner connection to the divine and to dominant well-being, which Source knows perfectly. Like there's all these people over here who are in love and knowing of that universal well-being, even in the face of such darkness. And what I see, like, and she's like, it's just going to be a more exaggerated divergence of these two paths where, like, this month of April, all this Pisces energy, all this like darkness, the end of winter, the culmination of the year, the culmination of winter and transmuting into spring. It's like, this is a time where the volume knob on the suffering is going to be louder. Like that's just how Pisces works, is like you turn up the suffering and the response blooms, the compassion to match the suffering and to transcend the suffering, it does bloom. And there's a very natural spiritual process, kind of like when women give birth and they just know how to do it. Like when we encounter harsh enough suffering, we know how to transcend. Like that's just part of what our soul is able to do. And you know, there's obviously going to be exceptions to all of this. There are outliers that, you know, they met suffering that they couldn't transcend, and that happens sometimes. But I would argue that that is like such a blip compared to how many people meet suffering and transcend it. How many people like actually figure out how to feel better, how to move forward in some way. So this message says, all the messages I've been getting is that the darkness is enhanced. We can see more clearly what direction to go. See, and I think so too, like that inner light inside of us, this is the part that blooms, that blossoms in the face of suffering. Inner darkness is like that is always there. And when the world around us is decently lit, we don't realize that the light is actually coming from inside of us. And when the world around us is dark, as in pitch black, doesn't matter if you open or close your eyes, you're in the same fucking hell that you were no matter what, you realize like, like the answer's in here. The inner light is really all that we ever can count on. Like we can't control what goes on in the world. We can't control the choices of other people. We can only control what we cultivate inside of ourselves. And this Pisces season, it's going to be turning the volume up on a lot of different things. And, you know, like anything else, there are upsides and downsides, and it's all in how we look at it. Basically, how Molly McCord put it was, this is a grand clearing, and asking yourselves things like, what can we willingly surrender? What can we allow to permanently shift? And remember that today's new moon, or that intentional preview that we're getting of like, who is the next level version of who we're going to be, that we're having that, whether we're talking ourselves out of it or not, that's a whole other thing. But like, we're getting the visuals, we're getting the downloads, we're seeing who is it that we're moving into becoming. And then as we go through this month of April and this darkness is turned up and all of that, this Aries intentional preview of who I'm becoming becomes this inner anchor of, yes, this is who I am. This is who I want to show up in the world as. And for example, like last week, we talked about like that intentional preview. And really right now, all we're doing is not talking ourselves out of it. That's all we got to do. You don't have to do anything. You just have to don't talk yourself out of it. So literally this morning, the vision came. I like to tell you guys my new moon, full moon stories, because I feel like a lot of people think it's going to be like some end all be all profound manifestation. And a lot of times, like, it's just a step along the way. It's just the next piece and the next piece. So anyways, my new moon in Aries intentional preview. And saying it out loud feels risky because, like, what if I chicken out and I don't want to do it? And like, okay, if I chicken out, I'm gonna have to tell you guys, hey, I chickened out. I'm not gonna do it. But where I'm at right now is I'm pretty sure I'm gonna shave my head. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna like give myself, like, not with a razor, but like give myself a buzz cut, like with some clippers and a really short attachment, and like just buzz all my hair off. And that feels so big. Yeah. See, this is why I tell you guys, because you're like, yeah, that's fantastic. Great. Do it. So that's my vision. That's my intentional preview, is that like, and I see, I guess more than I see, I can feel, like in here is where I can feel it, that like on the other side of severing this relationship with my hair is this freedom and this like uninhibited, like I'm like getting a high on the self-esteem that I can feel that girl possesses. And so I'm like, whoa. So this is kind of what I'm talking about. This is a perfect illustration of like this next level, who you're growing into, not who you stand here today and you are this version. Like, it's a very much like a leap on over to here. And there was part of me that was like so up in it, and I was like so excited, and I was like, yeah, maybe today I'll shave my head. And then I was like, no, I don't think that's going to work, because the story I told was because I'm in the middle of making this training video series. And it's like, I have kind of random episodes already recorded, and I have 5 left to record that are very much like sprinkled throughout the 10. And so it'd be like, oh, here she has long curly hair and here she's bald, and then here she has long curly hair and here she's bald. Like, just some distracting, and that's really not the message of like the point of those videos. So anyways, I'm supposed to be done soon, and this like lit a fire under my ass to finish those freaking modules like I have not felt in weeks. My motivation towards it kind of dwindled, and this brought it back like full force. I cannot wait to finish those modules so that I can buzz my hair off. And okay, so this is like, the month of April is this completion, this closure, this end of where we are right now, this transmutation of where we are right now, and releasing and transcending, and the end of this cycle, and having to really honor that there was a cycle and it's not over yet. There is something still here that requires me to still focus where I am and work through what I'm finishing. And then the very end of April is the first eclipse of eclipse season. And then May 10th, Jupiter moves into Aries, and Venus and Mars, and we really get going on the new. So it made so much sense, because I'm supposed to be done with my project around the end of April to the middle of May. And now that I know when I finish I'm going to shave my head, then I'm like, I could probably finish it by the end of April. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But I feel like, well, and also this came out of the Gene Keys as well, because one of my life's work bubble on the Gene Keys, which is the top of the Gene Keys chart. My life's work is the Gene Key number 12, which goes from vanity to the gift of discrimination, and to the highest level of divine gift of purity. And as I read through that chapter, again, it was one that like really didn't sink in. Like, I read the words and I didn't really feel it. And that night when I slept, I had like revelations, and I call it, I went to the astral realm and I was updating and processing and all of that kind of stuff, that it just like, it was, the energy was moving while I was sleeping. And then I woke up that next morning and I just understood so much more how freaking vain I really am, and how subtle it can be, and all of these things. So that was like a little bit over a week ago. And this morning I'm recognizing like how much of a relationship, like within my identity, like how much my hair really does make up, and that there's so much around that like, yeah, I'm glad that, okay, so I have like 4 weeks to kind of like get into this, like face this fear and work myself there emotionally before I physically move into this next level. I'm emotionally going to move myself incrementally up to this next level, so that when I take the step, it's like I'm here and I'm ready for it. So yeah, that was my preview, and I'm doing the thing that I told you guys to do, where I'm just not going to talk myself out of it. I don't have to take action today, and I don't have to even do it if I don't want to. That may not even be the point. So the outcome at the end, when we actually get to May and we get to all this Aries energy, we'll see what happens. But right now, that vision is exciting me and motivating me towards what's coming in April. And that's the point. That's the point of this April 1st Aries new moon, is like, use that preview to enliven you and fuel you towards what do you need to just close so you're done with it this month. Like, put a stamp on it, send it off, you're good to go. So yeah, the highest form of like what we're doing in Pisces is that transcendence element, which is it's the pinnacle of the healing process, the water family of Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. The end of it is Pisces, where we make peace and we transcend. And making peace with the divine path, essentially, with your life, is really what we're reaching for. Like, that means that we make peace with what happened, and we make peace with the timing of when it happened. We make peace with any of the pain we've ever felt, because it launched us into who we are today, and we like who we are today, hopefully. There is such a process of like learning the lesson, being grateful for the lesson, and then letting go of the pain that the lesson cost. And that was just part of the transaction. Every transaction has a cost and a benefit. So once you've got all the benefit, stop paying the cost. And that letting go process, like, you know, I think there are people who want to rush that. And like, I wish I could let go of this. I wish I'd be, you know, done with this hurt and this grief and all of that. And personally, when I'm in that place of kind of like spinning my wheels into the victim side of Pisces, it's like, you know, the hurt is there to teach me something. And until I've learned that lesson, until I've milked all the benefit out of this experience, the hurt will be with me. It's teaching me. It's my teacher. And I'm with my teacher in this pain. And once I've learned the lessons that that teacher has to teach me, then I let it go. And I think, you know, yeah. So that's Pisces. Pisces is vast. I mean, any of these 12 archetypes, I feel like we could dive into them for hours and days and months and years of contemplation. But for the sake of like, how do I actually use this information to help me in my life? I feel like we're just kind of hitting the high points that we need right now. And so next we're going to look at Venus. So Venus, the goddess of love, is the ruler of both Taurus and Libra. So Taurus is the feminine face of Venus. Taurus is an earth sign. Earth and water signs are feminine. And then Libra is the masculine face of Venus. Libra is an air sign. Air signs and fire signs are masculine. So with that, Venus is associated with the second house and the seventh house. And so we're going to see that play out as we go. But really, I want to start with this because Venus, the goddess of love, like a lot of what Venus ends up being talked about is like relationships and relationship dynamics. And specifically, they're talking about relationships with other people, like falling in love and finding your partner and all of that. But really, our foundation of relationships is our relationship with ourself. And any of the relationships that we have, whether they are friendships, work relationships, romantic relationships, parents, kids, whatever, all of them are reflecting your relationship with yourself. So I think about like my cat peeing in my plant and me exploding at her. And now I'm mad at her. And now I'm sitting here saying like that relationship is just a mirror showing me my relationship with myself. So who am I really mad at? Me or Lola? And I think it's me. I think there's a thorn in there. I mean, I'll have to keep you posted on the saga of the kitty peeing in the plant and what all I've learned from it, because I really do think that there is something with roots much deeper that has to do with me and how I see myself and the vanity and the seriousness with which I take in the world at times. And Lola, this cat that I've had for over a decade, is this mirror for me to get to see myself more clearly. And by getting upset with her for her bad behavior, I got to see my shadow of seriousness. And in cleaning the pee up out of the carpet, my main concern was that it's going to stink in my room and in my house. And like, you know, what will people think if my house smells like cat pee? And I'm like, wow. So that's deep, Lola. Like she didn't even know that her having the urge to go potty in the plant, like it's going to be this whole spiritual epiphany for Carly. And so that's how our relationships are the mirror. Like it's not ever them. They are reflecting something to us about us. And sometimes those can be tough pills to swallow. Oh yeah. Anyway, I've been struggling with regret and victimhood with regard to my recent autism diagnosis. I'm wishing I could have gotten it much earlier and wondering why I didn't. And a different message, the kitty pee struggle is real. Thank you, Jody, for affirming that for me. So yeah, I'm in it right now. But back to Shay's message. So struggling with recent or regret and victimhood with regard to my recent situation or recent autism diagnosis. Sorry. I'm wishing I could have gotten it much earlier and wondering why I didn't. So that really does go to what we were talking about with Pisces of like making peace with the divine path and making peace with the timing of what happened. Because if you really get into your Pisces, your high frequency Pisces, you see through Source's eyes that all is well, all is exactly as it should be. Everything unfolds at exactly the right moment for the highest good of the all. That's the Pisces part that like it can be a little tricky. I think when we try to bring our separate self into our Pisces energy, we can wind up in like what you're talking about with like victimhood, because we're missing that like we're not just here for our own personal highest good. We're here for the highest good of the all. Like we are all in this together. So if you suffered for a time, a longer time than what you feel like you should have or what you wanted, or, you know, I wish that that would have been shorter. I wish I would have found out earlier so that I could have been dealt with better, whatever. If you suffered longer than you think you should have, like that suffering has more to teach you, is kind of like what we were saying of like when you're done with it, you let it go. So the fact that you're still in it is no big deal, really. Like we're kind of all always in some kind of suffering for the most part. Like no matter how good your life gets, there's always something that you wish it could be a little bit better. But for right now, it's like this moment of you finding out and like feeling validated right now. Like I would say probably something along the lines of what happened is like you stopped needing the validation of other people enough to like let in the diagnosis. And now you do have this validation and it does blossom into the next level of where you're headed. But like not having the diagnosis was like a spiritual journey all by itself, because you felt different. You knew you were different. Other people didn't always agree. They didn't, you know, they didn't see why you were the way you were. They misunderstood. They needed you to be different. All of these things. So many people go through basically all of that and feel misunderstood on the inside when people can't, like, okay, so this is a related but slightly different story. So my partner, Dolly, she has 4 planets in Aquarius that are in her 12th house. So not quite the same as Pisces, but when you have stuff in your 12th house, it's like that's where the physical experiences take place, where we ourselves as individuals melt back into the divine. So having planets in the 12th house, it's not the same as having planets in Pisces, but it can look on the surface pretty similar. And she specifically has her sun, Venus, Mercury, and Jupiter all in the 12th house in Aquarius, and Aquarius is intercepted in her chart. So it's even more subconscious than just being in the 12th house. So Mercury is specifically the one that I want to point out here. Mercury is our ability to communicate what's on the inside of us to the outside of us. And so growing up, Dolly, she was not a verbalizer. Like she just didn't talk a whole lot. And when asked her opinion or her like ask her a question, and it took her back then a really long time to like think about the question, analyze the question, come up with the answer, formulate the answer, put words to the answer. It was like a whole process. And so because of that, like she basically had reflected to her that she's stupid, that she's just like mentally handicapped or something. And she knows on the inside that she's not. She knows that she's tracking. She's just like slower. She can tell that she's slower than everybody else around her seems to be asked a question and they can answer it. When they ask her a question, it's like this whole process. And like now knowing what I know about the 12th house and all of that, it's like, yeah, when you're, you know, trying to dig a tunnel, that's 10 feet long, like if you're only digging a 1 inch by 1 inch little cavern into the ground, it doesn't take very long to dig 10 feet across. If you're digging down 1,000 feet, across 1,000 feet, and then trying to go 10 feet, that takes a really long time. And so I explain all of that just to say that, like, she knew on the inside who she was and how she felt and what she wanted and all of that, but could not communicate it really to people on the outside. It just was such a process that people's attention spans, and how long are they willing to listen when they ask you a question, how long do they give you before you don't get to answer anymore because they needed it to be like 2 seconds long. So she felt very misunderstood, and like that almost convinced her that she's stupid or mentally handicapped or whatever else. And it wasn't until she was into her 30s and 40s that she realized, I'm not. My brain just is different than other people's brains, and yada, yada, yada. She hasn't ever been diagnosed with autism, but kind of similar in terms of she knew herself on the inside to be one way, and yet other people weren't able to agree with her and validate her knowledge and herself because she couldn't put it out there. And so now, within the last week, this whole Aries new moon intentional preview, who are you becoming at the next level? She works at the grocery store, and the grocery store had an applicant who had a stroke and so lost a ton of their faculties and is rebuilding. They're in their mid 40s and rebuilding their abilities and wants to know if we have any work at the grocery store. Plus, there's this community group that has all of these different people that they work with that are also, mentally, whatever the right word is for it, but they need special opportunities and special attention and all of that. And Dolly is like finding herself situated in this new thing that's just like unfolding around her, where her true self is rising to the surface like never before. She's 48 years old. She's never seen herself in this light. I don't know how she'd feel about me telling you guys this story, but it's beautiful. So I am, because she is discovering her purpose day by day as she works with this population of people who, by other people's standards, are deficient in some way, that there's something wrong with them. And she is having results with them that is unlike what other people are able to experience. And she is feeling it so naturally just come out of her, this compassion and this ability to look into the person's eyes and read their energy versus just judging them based on what they're able to verbalize, because she knows what that feels like. And so again, to tie this all full circle, it's like, without the experience of her being treated like that her whole life, the depth of her compassion isn't even close to the same. And we're here for the highest good of the all. It's not just about Dolly's highest good, it's about the highest good of the all. And Dolly having these first almost 5 decades of life where she's treated like this and has to really on the inside figure out for herself like where her self-esteem really comes from, because it isn't other people. And no matter if you can vocalize or not, it doesn't come from other people. And so she found it, and now here she is face to face with a group of people who needs her to be that compassionate and to understand that they are in there even if they can't say it out loud. And like that level of personal experience and empathy, like because you've personally lived it, you can't get that at school. You can't pay any amount of money to have a degree that's going to teach you that. So it's life, that's the suffering that teaches us what we need to know so that we can go forward and act in cooperation and in support of the highest good of all. So I hope that that was So bipolar disorder, I bring this up anytime anybody mentions it because I've been diagnosed a couple times by 2 different doctors with bipolar. This was like back in my very late teens and early 20s. And just right now, just to kind of like jump ahead, within the last couple months, I've learned about borderline personality disorder, which basically is a lot like bipolar, except it's not episodic. It's like bipolar is very much like sometimes it can be up and down, and like then this other one is like, that's just pretty much how you're wired. Like, there's nothing episodic about it. Like, it's just that's how it is. And I was like, whoa, okay. So that was an eye-opening thing to begin with. But number two, like, and obviously this is only my own journey. I'm not a trained professional by any means, but I very much still resonate with bipolar as far as a concept of like, sometimes your mood is elevated so that you're like one of the happiest people ever. And then other times your mood is depressed and you're like one of the most mopey, miserable people you've ever met. So like, I resonate with that. But at the same time, like, I think there's so much more to it that when I went through the process, you know, almost 15 years ago of being diagnosed, like, it was such a, let's like put a pin in it, let's name it, and then like, here's all the medications that we can cycle through until we find the one that'll fix you. And I tried a few different medications. That was not a good path for me, and stopped a long time ago, and have since like worked through more of like an emotional intelligence. Like, how can I be aware of my emotions and manage my emotions, and like basically take the mystery out of why my moods are all over the freaking place, like that volatility in my emotions, especially when you get more into borderline personality disorder side. It's like you have no sense of self on the inside. You're looking for other people to validate you, and when they don't, you feel miserable. When they do, you feel great. And I'm like, oh, like called out. So that's what I feel like I've done that has really, really brought the waves of what I used to call bipolar. I don't know what it is anymore. My energy fluctuates. Like, that's always probably going to be the case. But like, it's brought the waves closer to the center versus like, oh my gosh, they're like this. And it's like crazy. And I'm having impairments in my functioning, which is when, you know, it steps from being like a quirky little thing about your personality to being a disorder. Like, if you can't function, then that's a disorder. And if you can function, then maybe it's genius. And that's where I'm at right now, is like, I would have a hard time like wanting to trade my volatile energy because of what I'm capable of in those top moments, in those like really high energies, that focus, that inspiration, that clarity. Like, it's intoxicating. And then you crash, and it's the depression. And so like, also establishing my sense of self has made me more resilient within the crash. Not that I don't crash, but that I don't make it mean I'm a horrible person and I'm failing and I'm not keeping up. And like, you know, it's not necessarily that you feel bad or low energy for a few days. It's more like you start beating up on yourself because you're low energy and you can't do what you think you need to be doing or whatever it is. And that's the part that can take it from, like, I also learned about clinical depression versus congruent depression here recently, where it's like clinical depression lasts from like 2 weeks to about a year. And congruent depression, like basically they're saying like, so if you've been depressed continuously for longer than a year, there's more going on that medication's never going to touch. And I'm like, what about like 12 years? If you've been depressed for like 12 years, what does that mean? That's congruent depression. And that's this like deeper sense of like, something is missing. Something is missing in my life. And this is all very interesting as far as like, we've gotten way off track from the notes, but I think all of it fits because as we see through the month of April, the volume knob gets turned up, and like all of this stuff, all of these shadow patterns, all of these limiting self-beliefs, all of these beating up on ourselves and being our own worst critic, and like all of that patterns that aren't serving us, that are only keeping us where we are, like those come to the surface, and we have the opportunity to see them in a new way, in a way that says, I understand why you would feel like that. I get why you would, want people to tell you that you're doing a good job. I get why you would want your parents to tell you what a good job you're doing or whatever. Like, I get why you feel that way, but this is real life, and that's not what happened, and this is where we are. And because that's what happened, I learned X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3. I learned all of these things, and now I can take that knowledge and I can turn around and I can help other people who, like, especially people who are older than like 30s, 40s, older than that age and older, like being diagnosed with autism, like when we were young, like that wasn't a thing. It, like that just wasn't a thing. And so now, like there are so many people out there who have had to grow up with no resources, no tools, no support whatsoever, and just figure out how to make it in the world. And so there's two different ways to look at it. There's like, you finally make it to the diagnosis point and it opens up this whole new world of like resources and support and information and self-understanding and self-acceptance and all of that. And it's like, okay, so do you look at it like, I'm so grateful for finally being here and being able to like make this step forward? Or are we sad that I wasn't here already? And that's the point where I think this Pisces season, kind of whatever you're on the fence about, the suffering of staying on the fence and not just letting it go, like the suffering gets louder until we finish learning our lesson and then we can let it go. So it's going to be a process of being shown some things, and it is for the highest good of the all. And that, like, the highest frequencies of Pisces is where we trust that. We trust that no matter what is going on in the 3D version, there must be a reason. If you didn't get diagnosed with whatever until your 40s and 50s, like there must be a reason that you had to go without it for all that time. If you needed a diagnosis when you were small, you would have been born in 2000. Like that's just, you know, those kids came when the diagnoses were being handed out right, left, and center, because that's what they needed. They needed the diagnosis early on to go forward and do what they're going to do. People who needed to not have the diagnosis, they came a long time ago. They needed to grow up without it. And that builds this depth of compassion for helping anybody and everybody who finds themselves in that situation right now today, because you know what it's like to be on the inside of feeling so misunderstood. That basically, like, the lesson in all of that, I would imagine, is that more than most people, you are really good at not judging a book by its cover. Or maybe that's the highest frequency of like what that lesson would be reaching for. Kind of what Dolly talks about is like, she's like, I don't see their disability, I feel their energy. And they feel just as alive, if not more alive than most people you meet. So I'll take it. I'll take that energy any day of the week. So it's like, I don't know, this Pisces process, this Pisces season is like so much just about like finding the perspective that lets you let it go. And so much of that is like making peace with the lesson and gratitude for the lesson of what you learned out of that experience. So DBT, that's so crazy that you mentioned that as well, because I just learned about that yesterday. I think manifestors and generators can get confused with bipolar. I wish psychology would understand astrology and human design. Yes. Well, and that's like exactly the way I understand my bipolar now, is that I'm an open sacral being. I'm a manifester. I don't have sacral energy. I don't have root energy. The only motor I have is my emotions. So yeah, I'm a little volatile. Okay. So, and it totally depends on how much sleep I've gotten, if I'm hungry, if I'm like, there's so many different things that will make me more volatile or less volatile. And that's what I've had to learn, is like, how do you manage your energy? How do you have compassion for your crazy freaking energy, even though it's crazy? It is what it is. Like, this is how my energy works. When my energy tanks and I'm feeling low and I go get in my bed for 3 months, like, that's what it is. You just make the best of it. You do your best with what you got. And that, again, is like the highest level frequency of Pisces, is like that divine acceptance of what is. That like, this, what is, must be exactly where I'm meant to be, like always in the perfect place at the perfect time. Even when sometimes it doesn't really feel like that. DBT is a skill it's helped me more to realize myself as a spiritual being. The bipolar mind has seemed to wind down. It's been difficult, but finally I feel fine. Kind of the same. Like I didn't get into spirituality to like heal my bipolar issues like at all, but that's kind of what happened. Like, and again, for me, it goes back to after learning about borderline personality disorder, I resonate more with that one, and how at the core of that is like lacking a sense of self, and that really that comes from extreme attachment issues from your childhood, like severe insecure attachment with your primary caregiver leads to this no sense of self. Like you didn't have it mirrored and reflected to you when you were small, so you don't know who you are. And all of that sounds like, oh, your parent sucks. And now I understand it again through human design. I have an open identity center. I was never going to know who I was anyway. Like it wasn't going to work like that. So yeah, it kind of like puts it back, like the chicken or the egg. Like I have no sacral energy. I have no root energy. I have no identity center definition. So like, was it that my childhood like damaged me and like didn't render me with this sense of self, or like was it really the perfect environment considering like I wasn't going to develop a strong sense of self anyway? I don't know. Like that's again goes back to this process of like, how do you make peace with these things? How do you make peace with the fact that your mom, like you have a very insecure attachment that you're having to work through and like rewire your own attachment style as an adult and like reparent yourself? Like I held a lot of agitation towards my mom for a long time because that's a lot of effort on my part. And yet, as I look at it now, I'm like, no, I think I wanted exactly what I got. I think I chose wisely, that she delivered the exact set of lessons that molded me into who I am today and the depth of compassion that I have towards beings on this planet. Like every bit of what I went through made me who I am. And yeah, making peace with that. Like it happens one little piece at a time. So, you know, again, if it's like feeling like you don't make peace with the end all be all of your all suffering of your whole human experience, like even just one little piece in one relationship is motion forward and movement forward. Oh, cool. Maddie says that she's tried CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for OCD, and same thing, found that the spiritual piece was missing. So I have also tried CBT. And that one, I want to talk about it, but I don't know it well enough to talk about it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's Sun square. I think my moon in Capricorn and Sun square Saturn are my saving grace. Otherwise, I wouldn't be grounded at all. That is a beautiful way to look at it, Shay. It's like that. It's like my natal chart helped me so much because I had more the victim complex of like, my emotions are crazy. I'm the victim of my emotions, yada, yada. That was still not like super alive in me in my story, but very much was still residual and hanging on. And then I come to my natal chart and I'm like, wait, what? Because I'm a Taurus rising, Taurus Jupiter, Capricorn midheaven, Virgo South Node. Like all of a sudden I'm learning about earth energy and being grounded and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, I think I have a hard time like getting grounded because I'm so grounded, like by default, that it's like hiding in plain sight kind of thing. So yeah, it's like, you got to wonder who you would have been without those pieces. You know, you didn't like drop yourself in the middle of a war zone for nothing and no good reason with no tools for survival. No, you put yourself in the exact right environment for the exact evolution you wanted, and you brought the right tools with you. So like, yeah, I'm crazy emotional and I have all this like crazy, wild, erratic energy, but I'm also very grounded. I'm also very much like future oriented and want to accomplish what I set out to do. And all of that like harnesses the crazy and at least points it in the right direction. So again, you got to wonder, because a couple of those things, the Taurus rising and the Capricorn midheaven, which I feel like really strongly, really ground me in my whole approach towards life, is like earth, no matter if I'm like going out in my public self or my personal self, like earth, that's what I'm doing. And it really is like, it's like I have to come down to earth or be grounded to like get out into the world. And so, yeah, there's always little things that we did for ourselves so that it wasn't unbearable. It's almost always bearable. And again, there's outliers of people who couldn't bear it and they left, but how many people like find a way? They find help, they find support, they find, you know, most of us find our way. So this is a season of seeing if we can move that even one little bit more. So let's run through Venus and Pisces. This happens like once a year. Venus goes through Pisces for about 30 days, but this Venus through Pisces at the same time that both of the rulers of Pisces, Neptune and Jupiter, being in Pisces also, this is a once in 166 year event for Venus to come through here at this time. So this is very, just like the Aries new moon is very different than a normal Aries new moon. This Venus transit through Pisces, very different because we have Jupiter and Neptune both hanging out in this sign of Pisces. Venus specifically has been through a lot since November. Venus is our values, our love, our attraction, our self-valuation and worth. I have a video on my channel from Venus conjunct Pluto and Venus retrograde. Both of those will kind of talk through the same thing of like this. These last few months have really been about upgrading our sense of self-worth and how we assign value to ourselves. Venus also is how we find relaxation. It rules over our five senses, our aesthetics, our beauty, our arts. I think the main word that I like for Venus is values, and basically the intersection of how you spend your energy compared to what your values are. Like that meeting of like, are you living a life in accordance with your values? And when Venus goes through Pisces, our spiritual values, our spiritual service, our divine love that we just are, that like is because we're still connected to our higher self, which is an extension of source energy. Like that source energy, divine unconditional love comes through us all the time. And Venus in Pisces, we can feel it more personally for ourselves. It's like this combination of the beauty of Venus and the darkness of Pisces, like the beauty of all, like the beauty of pain and the wound that gives birth to the suffering and then the healing and then the transcendence and then the paying it forward and the helping other people to find light in their darkness because you figured out how to find light in yours. Like that, big stuff. Venus in Pisces also talks about honoring your spiritual journey, having plenty of solitude, probably some extra meditation, finding that inner tranquility. It also talks about, and this is something like if you have Venus in Pisces, then you live with this energy. If you are like most of us and don't have Venus in Pisces, then you're just experiencing this transit. This brings to the surface the desire, the heart-based, soul-based desire for spiritually based relationships, meaning if you're connected with someone and you're with them out of convenience or like for security's sake, or, you know, they make a nice paycheck and they're the father of my kids. And that's like why you're there, is to keep the peace and have stability. Like Venus in Pisces is gonna be a rough ride if that's where you are and you don't leave, because it really calls into the light of like how spiritually fulfilling are your relationships. Like when we have relationships, and again, remember, all relationships are just a reflection of our relationship with ourselves. But relationships, there's the physical component, the mental component, the spiritual component, the intimate component. There's all of these different components, and Venus in Pisces wants them all. So if there's any of them that are missing, it's just gonna bug you a little bit more while Venus is in Pisces. If you have a relationship that you don't really have spiritual compatibility, but you have practical compatibility, this is a time where it's gonna just bother you a little bit more that we're like not on this same page, and like maybe even launch a rocket that sounds like, I wish I had a partner who was more on my same spiritual page. And if you live with Venus in Pisces, chances are you can't make a relationship work unless there is that spiritual compatibility in the heart of it. The highest form of what we're reaching for with Venus in Pisces is bringing the divine into the sensory experience, where Venus is our five senses and our aesthetics and beauty and creating art, and Pisces is the all and our healing journey and all of that. So kind of bringing all of those pieces together to take your healing journey and turn it into art. And kind of the same thing, if you live with Venus in Pisces, chances are, in terms of communicating your spiritual journey, creating artwork may be easiest, as far as like, versus having to put it all into words and like, and then this happened and then I learned this. And that might feel like such a reach, but if you paint this really dark picture and in the center is the light and there's this rose that represents this and all this symbolism, that may be a whole lot easier to like put your journey into expression, is to create some form of art piece. Venus in Pisces also, because we're combining the all of the vastness of Pisces and the merging with like non-physical energy and the tangible sensory experience, it speaks about like tangible sensory psychic experiences. So like, for example, you have a psychic experience where you can hear someone calling your name. Like you can hear it in your ear, like somebody said it out loud. It registers through your actual physical senses. Same thing, like one time I was like in between falling asleep and being awake, and I must have dozed off just enough to like let in this moment of, it felt like, oh, it all happened so fast, but it felt like somebody was like right here in my face and like blew air on my face, like just a rush of air came across my face. And I opened my eyes as it was happening, and I felt the air on my eyeballs. So like, I'm opening, my eyes are open, I can see there's nobody in front of me, nobody's blowing anything at me, and yet I feel like the actual feeling of air blowing against my skin and on my eyes. And so it's like that. It's like just the line is kind of blurring between like what's actually really happening and what is coming through from this non-physical realm that's all around us all the time. So especially like, I think if you live with this, that's probably something that you've had to like figure out or put it in its place. Or I've also heard stories where like, yeah, you just turned that off a long time ago, like just shut down your psychic senses, like through fear, mostly like you were afraid of what was coming through. And so you shut down the psychic senses. And now like so much of your Venus, your love, your attraction, your all of these things that Venus represents, like is shut off. And that's obviously not gonna really work as far as seeking love above all else. But that's also where, like in terms of Pisces and Venus and Pisces, it's part of this, as far as like it's that tangible sensory psychic experience that makes it that much more scary or fear provoking, and can lead to, I just need to numb this. I just need a substance of some sort to like turn this off and like make the voices stop or whatever it is kind of thing. And so you numb it, and then the numbing wears off and the experience comes back and you numb it again. And that's how like Pisces energy is related to addiction, because of that cycle of numbing and the experience coming back, because that energy is flowing through all the time. And with Pisces especially, it's this like, you want the all. You want Pisces represents that all, the pain and the healing, the dark and the light, the all. And so you want the all, and then you're overwhelmed by the all, and then you numb yourself, and then you want the all because you're numb and like the all is missing. And so you let yourself open back up and the all is overwhelming. And it just is like this cycle that you can get stuck in without basically psychic hygiene and how to keep your frequency high. Because when you let your frequency dip, when you let yourself get tired and run down and out of gas and down on yourself and cynical about the world and all of that, your frequency is low. And that means what you're manifesting out of non-physical is low frequency things. And that's fear, that's anger, that's all of these things that you don't want. And so when you have really sensitive, open energy like this, you're receiving all the time. One of the best things you can do for yourself is psychic hygiene and keep your frequency high on purpose so that you are manifesting from non-physical things that are of that similar high frequency. Venus in Aquarius, supposedly I'm cold. So Venus in Aquarius is very detached compared to the other Venuses. And that does get a rep on the outside of being cold from other people who are expecting you to behave in a certain way and are uncomfortable because you're not giving them what they want, and then they tell you that there's something wrong with you, like you're cold. So again, this is why like listening to what's going on out there, like it can't really tell you who you are, because Venus in Aquarius is anything but cold. They care so much about the future of humanity. Don't even get between them and the future of humanity. The future in general, the well-being in general, especially of people who, like, what's the right word? Like, maybe don't have all the advantages, the disadvantage. Like, we want a world where everyone has a similar access to opportunity and to happiness and to living a life that feels good for them, where they're able to like fully express who their soul came forward to be. Like Aquarius is very passionate about all of those things, but it's an air sign and it's logical and rational before it's anything else. So if anything, it's a very strategic position, because Venus in Aquarius does not, kind of like your Capricorn moon, Shay, Venus in Aquarius isn't going to get run over by a big emotional tidal wave. They're going to keep perspective on, you know, how is this for the highest good? How does this benefit us? What can we learn from this? How can we improve? How can we optimize? And takes any moment of negativity as like a learning opportunity. And how do we make it better? How do blah, blah, blah. So there's a reason you might have wanted yourself to be that detached versus Venus in Pisces, where you're feeling everything all the time. Like that Venus in Pisces is kind of like a full-time job all by itself, because you're feeling so much all the time. You're taking in so much. And if you take it in, you got to process it. You got to move through it, transmute it, release it, all of that. If you don't, it's now stagnant energy clogging up your pipes, dragging down your system, lowering your frequency. You're manifesting harsher things. It's a bad cycle to get into, to not process what you pick up. So Venus in Pisces is like a whole job all by itself. Like you're doing your work much more energetically, versus Venus in Aquarius, you're much more detached from your own emotions, your own sense of love, even. Like it's just more abstract. It's more detached from you. Like you're seeing it on a picture screen. And all of that, again, is, I've kind of given a similar spiel about Aquarius moons before too. Like, that distance between you and something that for most people feels so personal, that distance is strategic. and it lets you see things completely differently than a lot of other people would see them. And that is a contribution. So there is no right or wrong sign for any of the planets to be in. And even when they start talking about, like, you know, Venus is in her fall in, what would it be? Scorpio, I think. And then it's like in its detriment in Virgo or something like that. But anyways, like, yeah, there's no bad. There's only different. And we all are different, obviously. Otherwise, like, we wouldn't have all needed to come here. Yeah. So fun. So yeah, okay, so the last thing I want to mention about Venus and Pisces is that Venus is still going to be in Pisces. It's there April 5th through May 2nd, so almost a month. And on April 30th, we have the first eclipse to kick off eclipse season. So that's the Taurus solar eclipse. And that's like the sun and the moon are both in Taurus on April 30th. And the ruler of Taurus is Venus. So while we have this first eclipse of eclipse season, the ruler of that eclipse will be over here in Pisces, where it's exalted. Venus is exalted, which means it's like lifted on high. It performs really well there. It gets along really well with the rulers of the Pisces and all of that. So that's supposed to be like, again, that eclipse is opening something up that is very much informed by the depth of how our love is connected back to like our highest love, our highest self, and the way that we're feeling source energy personally, which is very interesting. So that's April 30th. It's the Taurus solar eclipse. And on April 30th exactly is the day that Venus conjuncts Jupiter. A few days before that, Venus will conjunct Neptune. Neptune conjuncts Jupiter on April 12th. And so this will be like a couple weeks after that. We'll be very much still in all of that processing throughout basically this whole month of April. But Neptune and Jupiter, for more on that, I would say go back to that episode where we talk about the Neptune-Jupiter conjunction, because we go really deeply into how these are both rulers of Pisces, but Neptune is a very different side of Pisces than Jupiter is. And so when we have Venus conjunct Neptune versus Venus conjunct Jupiter, they do feel a little bit different, but they have a lot in common. Like, we just have a much more personalized experience of the divine. And with that, basically, it's like there are very porous boundaries between our sense of the physical reality and our sense of this larger non-physical reality that's always all around us. The lines between them are blurring. And during this whole month, really, but really especially when Venus conjuncts Neptune, the blurry line between psychosis and genius. So that is an interesting line to contemplate. I don't really have any answers on it, other than I think a lot of the distinction between the two has to do with what people on the outside looking in have to say about it. And so much of it, I think, like, especially this month, as much as we can, to let the distinction of psychosis versus genius, like, let it come back down to how we feel, and let it come back down to what our heart truly wants. And like this whole like shaving my head, like, I guarantee there will be people who look at me and say I'm freaking crazy. And, you know, am I psychotic? No, I'm on a spiritual mission here. But other people from the outside, they're probably not going to understand. And that's okay. That's like really okay. Because I think when people start calling us crazy, I think we're onto something at that point. Versus Venus and Jupiter is like this heart expanding. So like if Venus is our love and our heart and our attraction and all of that, and Jupiter expands whatever it touches. Jupiter is our philosophy, our view of life, our higher understanding, what gives us hope. It's our belief system. So it's related to religion, but even atheism is a belief system. So it really doesn't matter like what your belief system is. It's that abstract concept of your belief system, and that Venus conjunct Jupiter is the coming together of our values and our beliefs. So that sounds, again, very abstract, but it's like, what is your sense of pleasure, enjoyment, and beauty in the world compared to your beliefs and understanding about the world? And when you put those two together, it may sound abstract, but all you have to do is look at how you spend your time, and you'll understand like the concept of beliefs versus values. Our choices and actions are demonstrating our values and beliefs, and the intersection of those two things every day, all day long. And this came out of a video by Sam Geppy. I'm not sure how you say it, but it's on the prep playlist for this week, the April 1st live stream prep playlist on my channel. And it's the Venus conjunct Jupiter video. But he talked about how like both of them, Venus and Jupiter, are both benefics. So they're planets that typically bring good fortune. And that when you put them conjunct each other, it's almost like you run into too much of a good thing. And that is definitely possible to have. And so as we go through this April 30th, which is the same time as the Taurus eclipse, we're asking ourselves, how are our values and beliefs inspiring each other? So Venus and Jupiter, values and beliefs, how are they inspiring each other so that they're fueling you to move in a positive direction that feels good to you? And how are they interrupting each other? Which these are such abstract questions, but I feel like we as individuals, like it's going to be different for each of us as far as like so this is my example. When our pleasure and joy meets our belief systems, it's like, I want to be active. I want to do yoga and go for a walk and whatever. But my pleasure and joy and comfort and all of that, like I'll end up just sitting in my bed all day. And so it's like there's a conflict here. And when the Venus conjunct Jupiter is exact, it's like that conflict, any conflict, any space between your values and your beliefs, it's louder. And now it's louder so you can see it more clearly, and you don't have to do anything about it. You don't have to blow up your whole life, but it's about awareness and be more aware of, am I living in alignment with like really my truest version of how I see the world? Ooh. So this one says, so many frustrations in the last couple days. Stove broken, computer broken, brand new car not starting. Trying to stay centered and allow. So I don't know if you were here at the very beginning when I talked about my cat peeing in my plant in front of me yesterday, catching her in the act of, this is not what I want. And I got madder than, I can't even remember the last time my temper erupted like that. I haven't seen myself like that in a really long time. And part of what I'm realizing from that experience is basically like we can't heal the shadow if it's a mystery to us, if it's completely in shadow. Like if we can't see it, we can't heal it. And seeing our shadow means finding ourselves in the grip of a moment of behavior that came out of nowhere, so to speak. It came out of our subconscious, it came out of our shadow, it came out of our repressed emotions, but we didn't know about it until it exploded at the cat for peeing in the plant. So these moments of frustration, these little things that aren't working, that, it's like probably if just the stove had broken, like that's a little frustrating. Move on with your life. But then the computer isn't working, and now the car won't start, and now this, and now this, and now this. It's inching you probably closer towards more of an eruption type moment where you can really see the full extent of the shadow that you're like holding in there. That's my experience when life is like picking at us, like frustrating. There's like a breakdown to break through kind of unfolding, happening. Maddie, on the Deja Blue YouTube channel, there is one of her episodes called, or it's not called this, but the still image says, "I got hacked." And I don't know what the name of the episode was, but I want to say it was like maybe December of 2021. But yeah, if you could get that one, that episode, holy shit, I feel like it explains exactly what we're talking about with like what this month of April is going to do to us, because it's like if it was just one thing, you would be like use your coping skills, use your deep breaths, move on with your life. You know, like basically in this episode, thank you so much, Maddie. In this episode, she talks about how like basically she got hacked. She was trying to buy an Instagram handle, and in the course of all of that, the guy like stole her Instagram account. And so that was like deeply upsetting. And she finds out about it like right as soon as she gets on the plane. So she's got to power her phone down, and now she's on a 4-hour flight, and like she knows that her Instagram got stolen. And I'll be right with you, Vignetta. Thank you so much. And then she gets there and they don't have her bag. Her suitcase, it's not there. It wasn't on the plane. She's like, it's a direct flight. How does that even happen? And so then her hearing aids, she's like mostly deaf. So her hearing aids were in her suitcase, and she's at a retreat where like it's a leadership thing. There's going to be discussions and on and on and on. And she can't hear. And so she's like just really broken down. And then she finds out, oh, the room assignments, everybody's doubled up. Everybody has a roommate because we're going to be in this immersive space. And so now she's got a roommate. Like she can't even just go in her room and like cry. So it's like all of these things. And then she started her period, and she doesn't have her suitcase, no clean clothes. She had to borrow underwear and tampons from somebody else. So like it was like one thing after another. And by the end of the week, she's like, every little bit of that was exactly what needed. It was exactly what blah, blah, blah. Like, it's like that. I highly recommend that episode. Highly recommend. The moments of little things that delay or frustrate us. Also, my husband's shadow is money, so he is getting more emotional too. Yeah. Well, and especially this whole like Venus stepping into Pisces, like seeing the patterns of like, how are we assigning value to things? Because same. Okay, so like my meltdown over the cat peeing in the plant, I'm like trying to trace back, like, what the hell am I even doing? I'm like this furious. I'm advocating on behalf of the plant and the carpet, who are not even close to as sentient as my cat. And I'm hurting my cat to spare the plant and the carpet. Like I'm just trying to do the math in my head of like, what am I thinking? Like, why am I so mad? This is not who I am. Like, but until that comes through us and until it's so present, like I think we just don't know. It can be like, so that's the whole thing with shadow is like, it's so our blind spot that we don't even realize that like we're carrying this irritability until it erupts out of us and it's big, and then we can see it, and then we can like hopefully do something about it. Thank you so much. No bad kitty. I know. Oh my gosh. I was like, I was so mad at her. And as I erupted at her, and like I said, like the scream, my throat still hurts today. Like the very first scream that I did. And it was a scream. It wasn't a yell. Like, I'm not proud of this. I'm just telling you, like, that is a moment of shadow. Like it bursts up out of you. And the size of the reaction doesn't match like the straw that broke the camel's back, you know, like they're not matched up. That's how you know you're in shadow. Like this is out of proportion. This has got bigger roots than just this one moment. And yeah, I mean, getting clear on our shadow, like I tell my clients all the time, and I've been telling myself this a lot these last couple of days, coaching myself, awareness, getting aware of what it is like 95% of the journey. Like just even becoming aware, by the time you are aware, you're 95% of the way there. The actual transmutation and transforming, it's like the last little bit. So like the fact that I'm in there, like furious, like cleaning pee out of my carpet, being more aware than ever of my shadow of seriousness. I'm like, this is me 95% of the way there. Like, I'm still angry as all get out. I have no idea what to do about this, but at least I'm aware. That's more than I had 20 minutes ago. Thank you, Lola, for peeing in my plant. Like, and going back to pets have been doing similar things. I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm not, like that's kind of what I'm getting at is like, I'm not sorry that she peed in that plant because it was extremely clarifying for how I was assigning value to all of these things. Like basically that anger proved to me in that instant that my carpet is more important than my cat. No, it's not. Like, no, it's not. That's not even a little bit true. And yet in that moment, that's how I treated her, was that she mattered less than carpet. Like I said, not proud of that. But at least I can see now that you're right. That's not how I would assign value in that situation. If I was going to bring my full consciousness to it in this moment, in today, Lola is obviously more important than my carpet. So Carly, like, why do you take it so seriously? This is carpet. Like, this is like, yeah. And that's where, again, it goes so much deeper. Like I said, like, as I was cleaning it up, I was worried that it was going to leave a smell and that then my house would smell like cat pee. And when people come over, they're going to be like, yeah, did you notice her house smells like cat pee? Like, again, that's valuing what other people think of me in this rare off chance that somebody's ever going to even come in here. I don't have people at my house. And I'm more worried about them thinking my house smells like cat pee than about the well-being of my cat. And like, again, that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be anyway. That was who I was in that moment. I had no control over it, but that was helpful to see that come out so that then I could bring more awareness, compassion to myself, but also compassion to Lola. I had to apologize to her this morning, to my cat, because I overreacted and she was just there to help me realize this. And I thanked her for her part in it and all of that. And we're working on rebuilding and repairing the relationship because my emotional outburst was completely unwarranted. So it's like that. It's like they're just a mirror. It's not the laptop, it's not the car, it's not the pet, it's not the husband, it's not any of it. It's like our shadow being shown to us. And this month of April, it's going to be a lot of shadow being shown to us. Yeah. Yes, awareness is the first step. In that moment, when you realize the irony of the situation, did you laugh at yourself? Yes, I've been cracking up at my ego self-importance a lot lately. Yes, all of this. Yeah. And it was so funny. That's where I'm like, the awareness really truly is the first part, because in that moment, it was like co-present. Like in this part of me was very much like the chemistry of like the anger, the rush of adrenaline, the skin getting hot, like the physiological changes that happen when emotions rush through our body. Like all of this was full of that. And I was still so fucking mad at her. Oh my God, I was like clenched up and mad. And at the same exact moment, I'm like somewhere up in here, aware of all of this and asking myself, like, do you think you're taking this just a little bit too seriously? And like that part of me is like really like, wow, Carly, wow, this is extreme. This is extreme behavior. There must really be something here. Like all of that was at the same time. There was like this really calm, observing part of me. And then there was this like fury that was there for several minutes. It was like, it took a while to dissipate out of my system. So yeah, it's like possible to be in the middle of being shown your shadow and still stand there with yourself with compassion, looking at it, being like, well, that's something. That's a little bit intense. We didn't know that was in there, did we? Like there's such a difference in like being shown your shadow and being stuck in the loop of shadow where you're like beating up on yourself for it, compared to being shown your shadow and having compassion that I'm always a work in progress. And this is just me being shown the particular step that I'm on right now, what I'm evolving right now. And yeah, I mean, I know also from human design that anger is the not self theme of manifestors. So when I burst out in anger, that's me operating off of my conditioning. That's me. And that makes so much freaking sense because I'm worried about like killing the plant and then I'm the guy who kills plants, or I'm worried about my carpet smelling like pee, and like none of that has to do with like who I really am. Like that's all conditioning. That's all like worrying about what the outside world thinks of me, or worrying about what my outcomes mean about who I am as a person. Like if my carpet smells like cat pee, that makes me this person. Like no, it doesn't. No, it freaking doesn't. It makes me a person whose cat peed on the carpet one time. Like that's all it is. It doesn't define anything about me. And seeing that yesterday, like I feel like I've unraveled some pieces of something. I don't know. I don't know what all got unraveled, but it was good. It was good. Good times. What time are we at here? 11:45. I feel like I don't really have time to go through this last little bit of Mars. But Mars also isn't moving into Pisces until April 15th, and it's there until May 24th. So I might just make like a separate video for Mars and Pisces, because I absolutely must do it justice. It is my placement. I carry this energy natally, and I am very fond of Mars and Pisces. Have been extremely frustrated with it in the past and have since become very fond of it. So I don't want to just glaze over any of this and miss out on it, but we have some time. And yeah, so I think I'll just make a separate video for you guys with a Mars overview and a Mars and Pisces conversation. That will be good for this upcoming transit, and then just kind of timeless as far as like I'll do some talking about if you carry that energy all the time like I do. Let's see. Oh my goodness. Also with Aries in 3 today, what does that mean? Oh, this one, I went back up a little bit and it says it's like a pressure cooker for me, and realizing how much pressure was building. And exactly, like that's kind of what I'm saying about like judging, like here's what happened and here's the size of the emotional reaction to it. It's like that tells you something about like, if you're reacting like this, that means that there was this frustration, and then there was this frustration, and then there was this frustration, and like they stacked on top of each other until eventually it was too much for your system to hold and it explodes. And so if you explode, like what I realized yesterday, like there was like not necessarily frustration, but even just restlessness, that like I have been pretty lethargic lately, haven't been doing a whole lot of physical exercise, and like that energy was in there and I was just kind of sitting on it instead of like moving it. And then I see something that normally would irritate me, no doubt about it. Like you say, poor plant, 100%. But like kind of the same, like that, I'm so quick to jump to defend my plants. And then there's Lola. And like this plant, for example, it's only like the plant itself is maybe like a year old. And I bought it at a thing almost a year ago and paid like $30 for it. Side by side with there's Lola. Obviously, I didn't pay any money for her. She's a cat, but I have paid to feed her and take her to the vet and litter boxes and time and energy and all of that for like 12 years now. And here I am like shitting on her and taking the plant's side. I'm like, where's my freaking loyalty? Like, what the hell is going on? Like, I just, in that moment, I found myself to be so far away from who I thought I was, who I want to be, compared to who I'm showing up as in this moment. And I was like, wow, that's kind of tough for me to swallow, but I'm glad that I got to see it because, yeah, it absolutely points towards like, I think I need a little bit more physical activity. I need to, like, when I feel restless, like, I need to not just keep sitting there. I need to, like, get up and, like, go do something. So, always there's something that we can learn about our energy management style and practices when we have an outburst of any kind. It tells us something about, like, our moment to moment energy management, I think. So yeah, with Aries, my son had a huge meltdown this morning. My hubby got locked out of the car at the grocery store. I have Pisces moon as well as Neptune in my first house. Wow. So see, like that sounds a lot like your shadow is like taking on other people's shadows kind of thing. Like when they're upset, you're upset versus like those porous Pisces boundaries of like their energy's your energy. Like it's just the same. And so like you being like stressed out by them being upset is you seeing your own shadow, essentially. Like, screaming is a clear communication. Yeah. Yeah. Like it came out of nowhere. Like, and I say that, I know in my mind, like it came out of my subconscious, like it came out of pent up energy inside of me. But still, when we see our shadow side, like there can be such a tendency to like lock it back up as fast as fucking possible. Like, get it back under wraps. Like, hurry. Somebody might see us being all crazy. And it's like, yeah, like thankfully, yesterday, Dolly had already planned to go hiking, so she wasn't here to witness the meltdown. Only my animals did. And then afterwards, like I got in my journal and was kind of just like unpacking the intensity of like what had just come up. And it was so funny because as I was journaling, I was like, I don't forgive her. Like I can't let this go. I'm mad. Like I'm so mad at her right now. I was probably like mad for like over an hour at her for what she did. And then yesterday kind of the steam just kind of came out of the balloon. And this morning I'm just really thinking like about my value structure that has me like freaking about to crucify my cat because she peed in a $30 plant that I've had for a year when I've had her for, it's just like, it's a whole thing. It's crazy. Yes, that's such a thing. She says, I'm learning it's a challenge, but I'm learning to stand in my power and not let others define my mood. Yes, that I would love to see your human design chart because I have a lot of open centers on my human design chart. And open centers, or the white, not colored in centers on our human design chart, are where we soak up energy from other people. And when we do that, it feels personal. It's their energy running through our system. We feel it like it's our energy. And so it can take a long time to even realize that like that's what's happening. And I think this too goes back to kind of being confused with bipolar. It's like when I'm around certain people and I soak up their energy and I take it on as my own, I act one way. And when I'm around other people and I soak up their energy and I take it on as my own, I act a different way. So how open is your energetic system is like personal to each individual. But yeah, I would imagine Pisces moon and Neptune in the first house, like you're incredibly open to other people's energy. And just this whole Pisces season in general, like this extended Pisces season with all these personal planets moving through Pisces, we all are just a little bit more porous, a little bit more like taking on all of the energy around us. And that, like I said, like if you're living with Venus and Pisces, it's like a full-time job to process all of that. And most of us aren't used to processing big chunks of energy like that. And so when we have this season where we have all of this extra Pisces energy like coming into our systems, it's I sugarcoat it just a teensy bit as far as like this month of April, we're going to be shown our shadows. I foresee some eruptions. I foresee some explosions of the emotions, if you will, because it's like all of that extra energy coursing through your system, pushing your coping skills to their limits and beyond. So, it's just a season where if we're going to be pushed into a higher level of self-compassion, personally, I've noticed that what precedes more self-compassion is a little bit of suffering. And when you suffer, you offer yourself more self-compassion. And if you feel good, it doesn't really happen that you would sit there and offer yourself self-compassion. So in a season that calls for more self-compassion, it's like, I got to think the weather report or the weather forecast is also calling for a touch more suffering. So not sure what my human design chart is, but very interested. Thank you, Maddie. She put the link in there where you can get your human design chart for free. Just real quick, human design is built off of your natal chart. So it's kind of like the natal chart is the very base foundation of like the snapshot of where the planets were at the moment of your birth when you were born. That's your natal chart. That is half of your human design chart is the snapshot of where the planets were at the time of your birth. The other half of the human design chart is they take 88 days off and say, where were the planets then? So where were the planets 88 days before you were born, while you were kind of in that last stage of gestation inside your mom? Where were the planets at that time? And that creates your subconscious personality. And then your more conscious personality is where the planets were at the time of your birth. And it's like the personality side, or where they were at the time of your birth, that's more like your known self. And then you grow into your subconscious self over the course of your lifetime. So it kind of puts those two together. Maddie, will you also grab the playlist from the channel that is Simplifying Human Design? So that's like 5 episodes that are about 10 minutes each that kind of break it down just so you can even look at the natal or at the human design chart and understand kind of what you're looking at. But just know, like, the base of the information is the same as the natal chart. It's showing you where the planets were at a particular time and how that comes together to say that like your vessel is wired in a particular way. So like we all have the same 9 energy centers as shown on the human design chart, and which centers are defined and which centers are open, meaning where do we produce our own energy consistently? That's a defined center, versus where we're open and taking on energy from the world. That's an open or undefined center. That tells us a lot about the types of challenges and struggles that we're likely to face, or the types of conditioning that we will most likely get caught up in. Like as a non-sacral being, where my sacral is undefined, sacral is where like our life force energy comes from. That's our energy to go to work all day, every day. That's our energy to reproduce and mate, have babies, all of that to like keep the species going and alive. I don't have that. So unless there's a transit that lights it up for me, or somebody comes into contact with me that like gives me some temporary sacral energy, I don't produce that energy myself. So like my conditioning has been coming out of being a workaholic, where like non-sacral beings are some of the worst at overworking themselves until they lead themselves to a chronic illness, because they're taking in the energy, the sacral energy of other people around them. And in those open centers, you take it in and you amplify it. So I don't have my own, but when I take in somebody else's, I can get a rush of physical energy that like I can ride that, even though that's not my energy. I picked it up from somebody else, and now I'm working myself at a pace that is not sustainable for me personally. And so that, I think, has led to my cycles with burnout, where like I'll crash and have to go away for a couple weeks and like just fall completely apart and have to put myself completely back together, and then step back into work and just overwork and crash again and burn out, fall apart, put myself back together, come back, overwork. So human design has been very powerful for me, learning like basically like I operate at a much slower pace than most other people. I have much less physical energy than most other people. So it's very, very dangerous to compare myself to anybody else and what they're doing, because then I want to work and accomplish at the rate that they're working and accomplishing, instead of honoring like my flow of energy and the level of energy that's present for me. And when we don't honor our own energy, that's when we wind up like repressing and bottling and burning out and blowing up and all kinds of things. Forewarning, human design is super confusing at first. It takes time to soak in. I'm not an expert, but know enough to know it's confusing at first. Yes, just like the natal chart, there's a lot of information inside a very small space. So that's where like my Simplifying Human Design series aims to break it apart so that it at least points out like, here's what this is, here's what this is, and here's what you're really trying to look at. And ultimately aims at teaching you how to Google your chart, basically. So like you can even figure out like, okay, this is this piece. Now, how can I Google that? So that's really all that series is aiming to teach you, is like how to read the chart itself. Obviously, every single chart is completely unique. So it can take a lifetime though, like confusing at first / like the first couple years of looking at it. They say with human design to like treat it as an experiment, that like you're experimenting with your design. You're trying to live like in alignment with your true energy and see what happens. And that basically like the first round of that experiment, the whole experiment is called deconditioning, where instead of living according to what you've soaked up from the outside world, you're living according to who you are and what organically rises within you. And that deconditioning, just to get started, takes 7 years. Takes 7 years to unwind and untangle all of the shit that you've soaked up that has programmed who you are today. Takes 7 years of conscious effort to like unravel it. And I mean, I've only been studying human design for like 6 months, but I've been on my spiritual journey for almost 6 years. And I can absolutely vouch that it took us a lifetime to get to where we are when we start. So of course it's going to take a few years to unravel it. But the natal chart, the human design chart, and now gene keys is what I'm studying now. They are all such powerful resources for gathering understanding and insight into who you truly are, not who you were conditioned and taught that you should be, but who you truly are. Shay asks, how do I find out if I have sacral energy? So when you pull your human design chart, the sacral center is a square that's like right here-ish on the human design chart. Nice little demonstration for you guys there. It's a square, and it is right in between the solar plexus and the spleen, and it's red if it's defined, and it's white if it's not. And if it's red, if it's defined, then you have sacral energy all the time. And you can also know by your type. So generators and manifesting generators are, is that right? Yes. So generators and manifesting generators are the only types that have sacral energy, and that makes up like 65 to 70% of the human population. And then the other 30 to 35% are manifestors, reflectors, and projectors, and none of them have sacral energy. So again, if you're a non-sacral being, this is why it can be so challenging to slow down to your pace, because 70% of the world is working, probably more than that, more like 95% of the world is working like generators, even though only 70% of them actually are. So I would love to know what you find out if you have sacral energy or not. It requires the same information pulling your human design chart as your natal chart. So you just need your birthday, the time, the location, and it'll spit it right out for free. And from there, yeah, I mean, it takes a second to figure out like, what am I even looking at? And so you even know what to Google, but that's where I'd say like that those few playlists, or the few videos on that playlist, Simplifying Human Design, would be a really great place to start. No, I do not have it. Sacral. Wow, lots to read. So like on your human design chart, your sacral center is white. The little square is white, would mean that you don't have sacral energy. Oh man, I've been studying astrology for 28 years and I still don't know all of it. I don't think anyone does. Totally agree. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible to know all of it because, like, for example, Neptune is one that I repeatedly keep coming back to because I feel like I've not even begun to touch into the heart of like, what does Neptune actually represent? Because it represents illusion and delusion and like mystical, non-physical, invisible things. And like the very nature of Neptune is that it will not yield to you forcing it to like reveal itself to you. Like it only reveals itself to you in time when you're ready for each piece that you're ready for. So yeah, I think it takes like a whole lifetime just even to contribute your perspective. Because like how many people study astrology and come to some very different conclusions? Like even just between Vedic astrology and Western astrology, like there are people out there making YouTube videos right now about how the North Node and South Node just entered Aries and Libra. And I'm like, I don't think it did, but that's just like, and then I really get thinking like, which is the right way? There isn't one. There isn't a right way. There's only what helps you in this moment. What helps you to know yourself better, to love yourself better, to accept yourself better? Like what helps you to be more clear about who you were born to be? That's the right version. And so yeah, I think there's so much potential to find like another layer deeper and another layer deeper and another layer deeper. So especially if you don't like, or especially if you are familiar with your natal chart, stepping into your human design, like it's a whole different language, but saying exactly the same thing. Like, you know, the only channel of energy that I have defined in my human design chart is the 1222. And I have my sun in the gate 12 and I have my north node in the gate 22. So everything that I've ever understood about my Gemini sun carries over into me building on that understanding to further develop it by learning about gate 12. What does that mean? It means basically the same thing as a Gemini sun, but they explain it completely differently. And gate 22 in the solar plexus, what does that mean? Well, it means a lot the same thing as this North Node in Pisces and Pisces energy in general. And so as you learn about it, it like just carries on. Like, you know, when you finish undergrad and then you go into graduate school and then postdoctorate, like postgraduate, on and on, like your knowledge builds layer to layer to layer, and human design fits so perfectly on top of your natal chart. And then on top of your human design chart, for those of you who might already be here, is your gene keys. So the gene keys is very similar to your human design. It works off of the new base that human design adds, which is basically where they combine the astrological wheel. So all 12 of the zodiacs, the wheel, they took the 64 I Ching hexagrams and placed them around the wheel so that they matched each hexagram up with a particular location. And then those 64 I Ching hexagrams become the 64 gates that are used in human design and the 64 gene keys that are interpreted through the gene keys, which again, same thing. It's like, you know, my life's work is the 12th gene key. Well, what does that mean? It means the same thing as the 12th gate on human design. And it means the same thing as having a Gemini sun in natal chart. So it's like just more and more and more a different way to look at it, a different way to understand it, a different way to see yourself through an even more positive light is hopefully what's coming out of all of this. Oh yeah, Maddie put the free gene keys chart. And let me talk you guys through this real quick for when you get there. So like when you pull your gene keys chart, that final page, it takes the same information, the birthday, location, and time. When you get to the chart page over on the right-hand side, there's a couple of different options on a menu for, at the top, it's called like a life's work audio. And you can listen to it. You can also download it. I would download it. So you have that. It's like a 20-minute contemplation of like, what does that gene key mean? So it's going to be whatever gate your sun lands in. That's your life's work. And that's just how Gene Keys interprets it. And so they give you that first audio for free to like get you started. And then if you want to buy more of those audios, they're like $3 a piece. So I have like 30 of them because like, why not? So I have all the ones for my whole chart, and I've bought lots of other ones for other people's charts. And so I have like quite a collection of those audios, where it just helps to like put yourself in that position. Like the gene keys, he's interpreting it like where the planets all fell at the time of your birth and 88 days before. The gene keys uses some from the time of your birth, some from the 88 days before column. And it's interpreting like those planetary placements as you were coming into the world. It was an imprint on your DNA itself. And that like through these contemplations, you can actually like unlock new layers of your own consciousness because these codes are speaking to your DNA. Like I'm very new to gene keys in general, but so far it has been an extremely profound experience. And if somebody was brand new to all of it, I would take them straight to gene keys. I would skip the natal chart, I would skip human design, and I would put them straight onto gene keys because it gives you a language that has nothing to do with any, like it just is very straightforward. It's the most straightforward, organized, simplified version of like portraying this information. Me personally, I'm glad I did natal human design gene keys. But if somebody was brand new and just getting the most bang for their buck, go straight to gene keys. That's my own personal opinion. Holy moly, I think I may also be missing my own sacral energy. We'll look into human design chart. I have a lot of work to do. Finding out that particular piece is very profound. And I feel like kind of the same thing, like even if you are a generator or manifesting generator, like AKA you do have sacral energy, even if you do, if you have an open root center, like no consistent root energy, that can manifest a lot the same. I think personally, the symptoms can be a lot the same, where you can get going on somebody else's wave of energy pretty easily without realizing that that's what you're doing. And you don't even realize it until you're crashed and you're burnout and you're just done now. And you pushed yourself too far because you're operating on somebody else's energy. So yeah, that's all of the different pieces are definitely helpful to understand, like, who were you taught to be versus who you really are? Yes. Yes. So the 9 energy centers of the human design chart are basically the Kabbalah tree of life or the chakra system. So again, if you're familiar with that, that just kind of brings it in and like puts it all together. So just all different ways of looking at it. Yes. So looks like I have sacral energy, but no root. So yes, same thing. Like the root center is a pressure center. So especially when you have an open root and you pick up anybody else's root energy and it amplifies it, the root center, it's a motor and it's a pressure center, meaning when you feel energy coursing through that motor, it literally animates your vessel. It like makes you get up and do things. Like it puts you in motion. And it's kind of tied into like our endocrine system and like adrenaline, basically. Like when you get a rush of energy through your root system, that pressure center, it sends out adrenaline and it makes you go. And again, if you have an open root center, other people's energy will flush through you and make you go, even when you don't really have the physical energy or capacity to do what it is that you're doing. You're kind of hijacked through your open energy centers. So the more open energy centers you have on your human design chart, the main takeaway there is like the more important psychic hygiene becomes. Like the more important it is that you keep your frequency high, that you keep your boundaries as strong as they possibly can be, and you just be aware of your own energy so that when you feel somebody else's energy come into your field, you're at least aware that I'm taking this in, and it's not just my energy's crazy and it's all over the place. Well, it's everybody's energy going through me all the time. So yeah, of course it's crazy. Stella, it's okay. She's having a bad dream. Sometimes she has good dreams and she wags her tail in her sleep. And I think that's like the cutest thing ever. Oh, there you go. Yes, this is why I need so much time alone and boundaries. Alone time Okay, so going back again, like the more open centers you have on your human design chart, the more alone time you need. So if you have all defined centers, like chances are you can function without much alone time because you're not really soaking up other people's energy. You're like, you have like a Teflon aura that just like sends their energy back to them versus some people with like, I only have two filled in centers. I have my throat center is defined and my solar plexus is defined. And everything else is open. And so, yeah, like when I'm around people a lot, I feel fucking crazy, like psychotic, like all over the place, the bipolar thing. Like it's just, I feel like my chain is getting yanked everywhere I turn. And that's why I voluntarily spend like 99% of my time by myself with my animals. That works with the way that I've set my life up. Hasn't always been like that, but like when I went to the office every day, or like back when I worked at the software company, like I I had like severe mental health issues, like coming back around again to suicidal ideation, and now understanding like I am a very open energy being, and being physically around that many people is simply not good for me. It just really isn't. Like, at least not yet, until I'm that much stronger in my own boundaries. I really do perform better, like my own health wise, when I don't physically come into contact with a bunch of other people. I don't like to be in crowds. I don't like to go and see a bunch of different people in the same day. Like, even over Zoom, I limit myself to like one meeting per day. That's it. That's all the space I have for other people's energy. Sometimes those meetings are 4 hours long, and that's usually just for the fun of it. But otherwise, like, I need to be inside of my own energy, because otherwise I get very confused on who is me and who is other people's energy flowing through me in this moment. And it is only through these last couple of years of like being in such strict solitude that now, I mean, I feel like when I go see my parents or whatever, like I can basically instantly feel their energy come into me, and it feels not good. And like, at least then I know that, like, okay, so when I leave here, I'm going to go home. I'm going to do some of my psychic hygiene practices. I'm going to get this energy out of me. I'm going to, transmute it as best I can and transform it into something and release it as best I can. And I'm not going to beat up on myself for now feeling all rotten and icky and negative. I'm going to realize that I absorbed that mood from someone else. And now I'm going to transmute it and let it go. And now I'm back. I'm back in my happy, positive self where I normally am, where I'm able to hold myself when I'm alone all the time. And then you go out with other people, and like it's just too easy to pick up their energy. It's very natural. Interesting. Fantastic. I experienced a massive anger yesterday and set in it after doing some push-ups to drive that energy somewhere else and understand it all. My friend just sent me the Untethered Soul book. So I'm gonna have to read that book now. My goodness. That's like just so crazy that like came back around. The synchronicity that lets you know, like, hey, it's the perfect time for you to go read that book. Okay, I will. I'll keep you guys posted on what I think of it. I'm super excited to check it out, because yeah, maybe I'll definitely check it out and let you know for next week, because maybe that's a nice place to go as far as these Pisces energies and the things that will be coming up from the depths this month of April, and the ways that we will see ourselves, that maybe it's been a long time since we saw ourselves like that. And our ability to love ourselves and have compassion for ourselves will be pushed to its limit. And most likely, it's like going back to the I Got Hacked episode, she talks about how it was a breakdown to break through moment, like the crumbling of herself. Like, she experienced real ego death through that series of unfolding. So it's like, it can be really productive to have our darkness rise to the surface when we have a productive relationship like this, where we can bring compassion to it. We can, sit with it and be with ourselves. And, can I be with angry Carly? Yeah, I can. I can ask her, where did that come from? That was huge. That volcano of emotion that was set off by this teeny little tripwire. Like, yeah, it was a big tripwire. She peed on the plant. That's not cool. But the size of the eruption didn't match the grievance that had been committed against me. So it's like, can you be with yourself in that moment and try to understand on an even deeper level, why do you feel this way? And our emotions, they're just information bubbling up in any given moment that help us to see ourselves more clearly and help us to gauge where we are more clearly. Like the rumble strips on the side of the highway that are telling you, hey, you're about to go in the ditch. So, if you want to stay on the road, cool, navigate away from the rumble strips and get back on the road. And if you don't care about going in the ditch, like you're cool with that, then by all means, cruise right past the rumble strips and go on down into the ditch. It's a rough ride. Tell you that right now. Most of us go in the ditch a few times and then we're like, okay, so these rumble strips, I'm going to stay on the inside of the rumble strips. Got it. I'm going to learn to watch for the rumble strips. Yeah, good time. Maddie, your book, The Untethered Soul? Is that what you're saying? She says that book is sitting on my bookshelf and keeps catching my attention lately. Huh. If you're talking about The Untethered Soul, that's wild. Which it's also wild. This is like that's so crazy. Have you ever read it before? Or was it just like buy it and put it on the shelf or whatever? Because that was definitely mine. What am I doing here? There we go. I thought I was tangled, but I wasn't tangled. I was going to tangle myself more. Anyways, so I started meditating like a month ago. This was like a whole other story, not the point. Oh, very cool. Dude, maybe we need like a little book club. We'll just read The Untethered Soul and then we can talk all about it. What was I saying? Oh, I started meditating. Oh, yeah. Okay. I started meditating like a month ago, and I've noticed that it has slowed me down enough where I can read books. Like, I've said, if you've watched my videos and channel for a while, like you've probably heard me say, I don't like to read. I don't really read books. I listen. I'm an auditory learner. Like I got a lot of stories wrapped around why I don't read books. But mostly I'm too impatient. Like it just takes too long to read the book and like understand whatever. And so I've been reading. I bought the Gene Keys books, the 3 books of the Golden Path, and then like the thick one that has like the explanation of all the Gene Keys in it. And I'm just like working through my chart, like one bubble at a time. And so I've been reading, like I'll sit there in the quiet and read for like over an hour. Like, holy crap, what's even happening to me? So yeah, like when I bought that book a year ago, whenever that was, like I wasn't really reading at that time, but it's been on the shelf ever since. And it seems like now it's time. I got it out the other day. It's over there on the table. So I'm going to read that book and see what I can gain from that. Seems like there's something in there that source is pointing me back to. That's maybe I'll just like leave it at that. As far as I do want to make a Mars and Pisces video, but Pisces, by the time it comes along, which isn't until April 15th through May 24th, Mars in Pisces lets us be at the perfect place at the perfect time for the highest good of all, which includes our highest good. We are very much included in the all. So it's like we kind of make peace with that divine path. You surrender to the divine path. And this is kind of how that looks as far as like, I bought the book a long time ago. I set it on my shelf. I didn't beat up on myself because I didn't want to read it. And now the universe is like bringing together all of these synchronicities that let me know like, hey, it's the perfect time for you to go pull that out and see what you can get out of it. Even if you don't read the whole thing, you read one chapter and it's exactly the piece that you needed at this moment. So that's very much Mars and Pisces, which, like I said, is my energy all the time. So I tend to operate like that. Like, let the path come to me. Let the universe tell me when it's time to do each perfect piece. And otherwise, like, try to go with the flow as best you can. We all just do our best. Untethered Soul is life-changing. Yeah, you guys, thank you so much for that book recommendation. The last time I got a book recommendation off of this, it was my very first one of these back on January 7th, which this is the 13th Astrology and Coffee, by the way, which just feels wild that this was already 13 of them. Just goes to show how fast things add up when you just will start. So yeah, on the very first one, somebody recommended to me the book Astrology for the Soul by Jan Spiller. And that is the North Node book where she goes through each of the 12 North Nodes and does like a whole chapter about each placement and like the past lives and what you brought with you based on your South Node and what you're trying to blah, blah, blah. Oh my God, it was so good. And that book, like for me personally, was like freaking life-changing. So yeah, I have no doubt that this Untethered Soul is going to be a lot the same. So yeah. Yeah, I have a very hard time allowing myself to read too, or at least I did. And since I've been meditating, and I don't know if this is like correlated, but for me, it sure seems to be interesting timing. It's like meditation, like I'm practicing slowing down. I'm practicing like going without stimulation for even just a couple minutes, like 2 or 3 minutes. Like that's kind of where I started, was very small. And like today, I got in the shower, did my whole shower, washed my hair, so it was a long shower, and got out of the shower and realized I hadn't put anything on for me to listen to. And I couldn't even tell you. Like the last time that happened had to be when I was like 6, 7 years old. I don't know. I got a radio when I was little and I would take it to the bathroom with me and I would play the radio to myself in the shower because the shower was one of those places where like my mind would get so open that I would like have my eyes closed and I would be having visions and like those like people blowing on me and shit like that. It's like very tangible and like you just don't want to have your eyes closed and like whatever. So if I had something to listen to, it would help me like not wander so much out into that terrain. I would stay focused and grounded on the radio, the sound. And so that was just what I did. Like I listened to stuff while I showered. I listened to stuff all the time, like just was never in silence at all. And so today to like get out of the shower and realize I just went 20 minutes and not only did I go 20 minutes, I didn't even notice that I was in silence. Like that's freaking wild. So I gotta credit meditation with that, the ability to be in silence and to be quiet and to be in the stillness and not feel painfully uncomfortable. And then also it seems to be opening up this space of quiet and stillness and being okay in the quiet, in the stillness, where it's allowing me to read. And great. Like that's just, I don't know. That's crazy. That's not at all why I started meditating. Like I wanted to, well, this is kind of funny. Actually, I started meditating because I fully intend at some point to do ayahuasca. And when you do ayahuasca, plant medicine, like once you take it, there is no turning back. Like it is what it is. Like you're on for whatever's in there is going to come out. And I'm sitting here thinking like, I want to do ayahuasca probably a lot of times. And I can't even be in silence. Like you want to take a like mind altering substance to like let your full self come out and you're not even willing to carve out 5 minutes of silence where you can like witness yourself trying to come out. Like that seems like going from 0 to 100 like all at once. And so I'm basically meditating to prepare myself for this future journey with plant medicine, where I fully intend to do that. And I think the better I get at meditating and being with myself when I am more conscious, when I do have the ability to pull myself out of it if I need to, then just like getting more comfortable in that terrain will set me up for success when it finally does come time someday. Spirit will let me know when it's the perfect time to take that plant medicine journey. So that's why I started meditating, and look at like now I can read some, which is, that's just great. That's just rific, guys. It's so rific. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have an amazing, amazing weekend, week next week, lifetime, all of the above. I am sending you so much love and wishing you the best on your journey this month of April. Check out the Untethered Soul. Apparently it's what we're all supposed to be doing. So yeah, until next time, you take such good care of yourselves, and so will I. Okay. Okay, bye.